Good morning, everybody. My name is Douglas Morrison. I'm the President and CEO of CEMI, based in Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. So perhaps I have a topsy-turvy perspective on the world compared to Australia, just because I'm at the bottom end and you're at the top end. I'll allow my panel members to introduce themselves in a few minutes. We actually came up with a list of questions that we'll go through. Sometimes I actually wonder if I step through the looking glass, because my perception of the industry is there's very few other industries that we have that are greater consumers of capital and more effective destroyers of value than the industry that we're actually in. And the declines in productivity that we've seen quoted in several different places are not mythology, they're actually true. I would also say that there's a huge distance between a hackathon and your first sale as an SME or a small company. And most SMEs that try to penetrate the global mining industry will die before they make their first sale. So these are all questions that we're going to get to about how we actually make change happen, because I think what we've been doing for the last 10 or 15 years has not been effective. If we can get the questions up, we can go through those. Basically, nothing else in your society or my society in Canada that was introduced 12 years ago or was developed 20 years ago is described as being new. So autonomous trucks are not new. It's not a novelty any longer. The shocking thing is that it's not ubiquitous. The fact that it's not ubiquitous says our industry is very poor and very slow to adopt new ideas. This should be everywhere. It's not a novelty any longer, and 12 years old, you can't call it innovation any longer. What's the next innovation? Because I'm still waiting to hear that. In underground mines, which is where my background is, we've managed to hide from innovation very successfully based on the fact that we don't have good communication systems underground. Those communication systems, however, are improving dramatically, and underground mining operators will have nowhere to hide from innovations any longer, because communication systems make it possible to do anything we need to do. The big question is, what are we going to automate? Are we going to automate the same equipment that we've been using for the last 10 or 15 years, or 35 years, or something new? It's a myth to say that mines are automating in order to reduce labor cost. The big shift in our industry is demographic. We have to automate our production systems in order to cope with the fact that we cannot attract sufficient numbers of young people to come and work in our industry. We have a huge demographic cliff coming, and we are nowhere close to prepared. And if we're still talking about autonomous trucks next year, we'll be 1 year worse off than we were this year. So the skill sets that are going to become necessary, we don't even have the education systems to replace the engineers and geologists and miners that we have. In Canada, at least, the replacement rate for engineers and geologists is less than 20%. So, and that's replacing a new engineering graduate with, replacing a 30-year, 40-year veteran with a 1-year veteran. Skill sets change is shifting towards technology and management of machines and management of data, etc. That's a completely different skill set, but it's not just a shift in skill set that we'll talk about, it's also a change in mindset. I'm a fireman. I'm a reactive decision-making person who likes to solve problems. I do not like to use my expertise to avoid problems happening in the first place. There are other people who are much better at that than I am, and those are the people that will be employed in the future mining industry to avoid problems from happening, not in solving them on the fly. So the workforce in the future will be completely different, not just with skill sets, but of course they will be much younger and with a completely different attitude to working for companies. And certainly in Canada, we still have the thing where women in our industry are paid roughly 75 cents to the dollar of the men in our industry for comparable positions, and millennials are just not going to put up with any of that. They're just going to move on to the next company and the next one and the next one. So if you want to have continuity of employees in your mining companies, we need to drastically change how we treat employees of other gender and ethnic groups that join our industry. And finally, the technological piece is simply The social changes that will take place in our operations will be far, far faster. I keep hearing people talking about technological change that will take place over the next 10 or 15 years. It won't be. It will be much, much faster than that, because it's all going to be driven by the personnel changes that we have, as well as the technological changes. While I take my seat, I'm going to ask Pamela on the far side to introduce herself very briefly. Then we'll move on to Natalie and Joe, and we'll take the conversation from there. We have a list of questions here, just to prompt your thoughts, and if you want to pick any of those, we'll work our way through the topics that we think are really important to address. But if those trigger something in your mind when we come to the public question section, then you can ask away and interrogate the panel to your heart's desire. Okay.
Hi there, good morning. Pamela Hackett. I'm CEO of Proudfoot Consulting. And the fabulous thing about being back in Australia is I actually joined Proudfoot 32 years ago, 1987, when I was 12 years old, and did my first assignment was Mount Isa Mines in the middle of nowhere for me. And at 12, you can imagine how, the shock and awe of being in Mount Isa Mines. But 32 years later, still with Proudfoot, publicly traded company out of the UK, and now the CEO. My job is to reinvent a 72-year-old brand and really figure out and crack the nut on how do you manage all of that change, and how do you engage with mining companies. To be 50% of our business is mining, so how do you engage with mining companies in this new world where you've got the exiting of us old guys, all the old farts around the world are headed out the door, and all the newbies are coming in, and there's that transitionary period. But then there's also how do you actually, what's it got to look like in the future? So perhaps some of those kind of things we can talk about this morning.
Hi, Natalie Bussau from Sandpit Innovations. So what we're really passionate about is linking all of this change to value delivery for businesses. So there's an immense range of different technologies out there that can be put in place. And a lot of the companies that we work with really struggle with understanding which technologies they should put in place and what's the sequencing of those, and having the confidence to just move, because a lot of companies are actually destroying a lot of value. And the comments earlier echoed this of what's the amount of money you're missing out on every day by not taking the leap on technologies and actually moving and spending 18 months getting to, plus or minus 10%. If you're directionally correct, why don't we just move now?
Morning, everyone. My name's Joe Carr. I work for Inmarsat. I'm a mining engineer who works for a satellite company, which is a bit of an odd combination. And we're a little bit opposite to the way everyone else is, because we're a very large technology company that spends a lot of money launching our own satellites and using SpaceX and doing all kinds of cool, really innovative things. But when it comes into the mining industry and several other industries, we're actually one of those sort of companies that looks in and says, what can we do? And there's a lot that we can do, but we've never really engaged with the mining industry. And when you talk to the mining industry, we always joke we're the biggest company you've never heard of, because I guarantee everyone in this room has in some way or other used our services for almost your entire lives. We're on every ship that's on the ocean. We do maritime distress. We're on 90% of wide-body aircraft, providing safety services and cockpit connectivity. And yet, very rarely do we actually go out to mining companies and engage and say, what is it you want to do? Because we can apply a solution anywhere on the planet. And really, when I joined the company, that's a lot of what I'm doing now, is going out and saying, an autonomous truck, great, you've got $1 billion in the Pilbara to build a wireless network, but how does a junior miner in Africa apply that same technology without that CapEx? That's really my focus.
Yeah. So for me, it's really interesting because I hear a lot about KPIs. In actual fact, for most mining operations, there's only one KPI, and that is to move more ore of higher value at lower cost. We have a whole plethora of internal KPIs that people try to measure themselves by, but to what degree have they contributed to moving more muck at higher value at lower cost? That's the entirety of what our business is about, and we need to have some rethinking about how we focus everybody's attention on those targets and not essentially moving equipment around or fixing equipment. That's not the task. The task is moving ore to the mill to produce metal. So I'm going to start off with Joe, just to work our way back down the line here to give the ladies some more chance to think. But you're going to talk about change management. Most of my career, certainly in the Canadian mines up north, the word change management was never mentioned. There was no such thing as change management. Here's the new equipment, get to that, and do the best you can. And if you don't do it well, we'll punish you. So that was how it was done when I was a young engineer. I know it's far more sophisticated here in Australia, but Joe, take it away.
Yeah, so for me, we did a piece of research last year. We did a very large research where we polled about 1,000 mining companies, and we went out and we asked them about, what is change actually going to look like? It was an IoT piece, right? The fourth industrial revolution, it's the big buzzword. So we went out and we said, okay, how do you want to do that? And a lot of the companies came back to us and they said, in the next 2 years, 70% of the companies said, yes, absolutely, we're going to employ IoT and we're going to be more productive and more safe. And then we said to them, great. How are you going to do that? And the same 70% of the companies came back and said, we have no in-house skills to do this. The wonderful vision, but actual delivery, and I think that's where the conference today, when you're talking about the SMEs and you're talking about the outsiders to the mining industry, they're absolutely going to be critical, because we're never going to get that capability that comes from those things, right? If you want to have safety monitoring on remote personnel and wearable tech and the things like that, and get the communications right, or get your tailings dam fully integrated and reporting live in real time, explain to me who within the mine is going to do that, right? Because the mining engineer, he's not going to do it, and he spent his whole career doing drill and blast, and he doesn't know how to build an IoT network. And the geologists and the guys in the plant aren't going to do it, and frankly, they don't have the time to do it. And the mining engineer of the future is probably not going to spend that much time doing mining engineering, because he's got to be a guy who knows about automation, and he's got to know about IoT, and he's got to know about sensor networks, and he's got to know about autonomous equipment, and he's got to be able to manage and run all of those systems. And the industry, the way it is teed up at the moment is, I think as Doug said, we have an aging workforce. It's historic. Everyone's talked about this for 10 years. There's no major upset. We go through cyclical generations of business, boom and bust, and we wash out the bottom of the industry, which tends to be the guys that are newer, and they go off and they do other things. I mean, I've been on 2 mines that have closed. They were closed. One was closed for economic reasons, and one was closed for governmental reasons, because there was a social license to operate issue, right? And at both times, they just said, okay, bye, thanks a lot, thanks for having you on the mine, and off you go. And I think that washes people out of the industry, and eventually they do go, and then once people go and they work for somebody else to do whatever it is, maybe they go to oil, do they come back? And I think we lose a lot of people through those cycles, and mining, I think, now has woken up more to it, and we certainly talk about it more. But I think, yeah, the skill shortage is going to be very interesting, because we're still training the old skills. Right? We're still training geologists to be geologists and not to be data analytics scientists.
That's right. Maybe, Natalie, you can go on about the cycle times.
To add to that, change management, I think, is a word that is not really defined very well within the industry, and there's actually a lot of change that technology is going to bring about. And I think you just spoke to this difference between a batch process that all of these businesses work by around capital and procurement, and I think technology is requiring this need to move to a more continuous process. But in order to actually do that, and for businesses to make that change, there's a whole range of change management that has to go on, because you can't move from a business that is very structured, a 5-year budget down to a 3-year budget, down to a 2-year plan, to your 3 months, and all of your KPIs and how everyone is paid is against that viewpoint of the world. There's a lot of inertia there, and to actually move into this technology world where you're taking on technologies, where you're seeing high value opportunities and actually moving towards those, companies need help to actually run their businesses in parallel over a period of time to move to this continuous way of operating in the future.
Yeah, agreed. Don't you love, this is the next generation leaders, globally. These guys are in their 30s, and then everyone in the room, who's over 50 right now? Yeah, who's over 40? Who's over 30? And who's in their 20s? And that's pretty much the demographic of mining, right? I mean, it's the older generation who is trying to attract, and I look at Joe. Joe used to work for us, and I use the word used to. He used to work for us, and he doesn't anymore. And one of the reasons Joe doesn't, not to put words in your mouth, Joe, because I'm sure there's lots of reasons, but one of the reasons I think why Joe doesn't work for us is because our lifestyle of being away from home Monday to Friday is not the 30-something lifestyle. And in fact, it's worse than that. We're doing work with Oya Teuger in Mongolia. I've got 15 people on the ground. One of the unusual things about that is that people are lining up and putting their hands up and saying, we want to go there. Normally that's not the case. Normally those guys are saying, oh, 4 weeks away from home, planes, trains and automobiles. How am I going to balance that with my wife, my girlfriend, my kids, my boyfriend? And instead, what has attracted those guys is the real interesting nature of the work. And that overrides the inability or what's in their mind around being away from home all the time. But I'm sure we lost Joe because he's got a little one and we couldn't figure out how do you engage someone like that. So the big question for me is, and I use that phrase, you know, organisations need to be managed, but people need to be led. And so you really need to reconsider the whole concept of change management into change leadership, and it is a leadership issue. And then leadership has all this stuff coming at them today that is really difficult to balance all those balls of today with tomorrow, because you've also got to balance the emerging needs and the new capabilities and all those things that are going to happen. And so one of the things that I would consider, and I would ask you to consider, is there's lots of conversation about innovation and there's lots of conversation about technology, but how many people in the room have done a hackathon or have done a real deep dive into their management models? And that's what's going to dictate your culture going forward. It's what's going to dictate who wants to enter your business, and it's going to dictate who wants to stay. So when you do your innovation conversations, who in the room right now is doing hackathons on management innovation? And therein lies the problem. And that's really one of the things that we need to change. You've got to be able to innovate your leadership and your management models, the way that you hire, the way that you retain, the way that you motivate, the way you make decisions, the way that you set your strategy, the way that you actually interact with and work with and engage your workforce. I don't think it's about empowerment anymore. I think it's about real engagement and real enablement, and that's slightly different, and it requires a different model. So the real challenge for us today is how do you innovate management? How do we become innovative in the way that we do business?
Yeah, I think if you think about how quickly our industry adopts new ideas, it's actually extraordinarily slow. Most of the innovators that we've worked with in Canada, they've actually managed to find sales in other industries. They've used the technology that they targeted to use in mining, but they found other industries, other sectors of the economy that would adopt that technology faster than mining, and they're not coming back. They're already making sales in some other business. And the fact that our corporations were so slow, it's difficult to work their way through massive procurement systems that are maybe designed for companies like Komatsu or Google or Amazon, etc., but they're not designed for small companies to be able to penetrate and make a sale. And so those companies either die more quickly, just waiting for a sale within the mining operations, or they move on to other sectors of the economy and they grow from there, and they're not likely to come back and re-engage with the mining industry. And that innovation there is lost to our industry, and that's one of the factors that we have to cope with. The fact is that every single day, our mines are getting older, deeper, hotter, more expensive to operate. So innovation is not a risk. We talk about the risk of innovation. The risk is not innovating, because your product, your actual operation is in decline. If you keep your operational processes exactly the same as they were yesterday, you're actually less productive. You're eroding your return on investment every single day just by the nature of our business. We're mining a fixed, finite resource with the same process. If it's not being improved, you're actually in decline. So innovation is not the risk. The risk is not innovating and not improving just with continuous improvement with significant steps forward, because lots of the time we can't innovate every single day of the week. That's just not a reasonable expectation. People have to run the operation through. How do we bring in step changes forward in big steps to make a significant impact on the bottom line? Because if it's not impacting capital expenditure, the rate at which we can accelerate to first revenue or early revenue or changing the ROI, if we're not doing one of those three things, then what's the technology for? Those are the targets that we have to impact, and maybe you can talk about how your company actually moves those things forward and how you think the smaller companies, I mean, your company is really quite large now. There are many smaller companies than yours that have to somehow figure out how to penetrate into this massive global enterprise.
Yeah. I mean, even for us, you know, we're a multi-billion-dollar company that's been going since 1979, and mining for us was not ever one of our core businesses, right? I mean, we have 4 core businesses: maritime, government, we're the biggest supplier to the U.S. government, and yet I go and I sit down with a mining company and they say, oh, so what have you guys done? Have you got proven technology? Is it secure? And you know, the U.S. Special Forces are using it, and people say, okay, and it's a bit like what they discussed earlier, right? It's show me where you've done it. Okay, I've done it here. Show me where you've done it in mining. Okay, I've done it here. Show me where you've done it in my commodity. I've done it here. Okay, but we're in Western Australia, so show me a project in Western Australia in my commodity where you've done it. And there are a lot of gates, even for a company of our size, that can say, okay, we'll spend 6-12 months on this, right? If we want a project timeline, and I can imagine as a smaller technology company to try, like you said, and do that and take that time. You know, how do you penetrate the bureaucracy of a 200,000 employee company to try and sell them a piece of tech and then get a POC, even just a POC on a site? Oh, I need access to a truck, right? And okay, great. You've got to come to site and you've got to do all your inductions, and then it's a production truck as well. We can't take it out of production. So how are you going to get on it, right? And it's the same with Caterpillar and Komatsu, right? Mining's a very busy business, and getting your value proposition sorted. I think if you're a very small company trying to sell to mining, you know, you don't want to sell the cost, right? You don't want to say it's $1 million or something like that, and we think it'll do this or that. It's very much, you're going to get 5% more productivity out of your truck, right? And that's what a mining engineer's eyes will light up, and he'll say, great, I can get 5% more tons. And maybe his bonus is in the back of his head floating around somewhere, and he says, great, I'm going to get some more ounces, and the mine manager will be very happy. But I certainly think value propositions speak to miners, and they're also very willing to say, okay, work with you on how do we build that out. You may come with something very interesting, like, you know, some of the stuff we've got. How do you do an autonomous truck over the satellite network? And then people come up with lag, right? Well, why is lag the problem? And you actually sit down, well, it's because trucks really aren't actually autonomous. Trucks are making the decisions on the server, not on the truck itself, right? It's essentially a glorified remote control at the moment. When it's truly autonomous, the truck will make the decision, and the guy in the control room, you know, on the other side of the planet, the truck will stop itself, and he'll get a light flash, and he'll go, oh, it stopped, and he'll have a look, right? The idea that 60 milliseconds makes a difference is because the way we're doing things. So I think some of that value proposition and some of the ways we approach things, we have to get out of a mindset that's been pre-built, right? And there's a lot of that in mining. It must be done this way. Why? Because that's the way we do it. Right? And if you don't do it that way, then they're not interested. So I think there's a step change, and like you said, it's coming.
Right. And do you think we're becoming more impermeable to disruption, or less?
Disruption, you know, we've had this discussion a bit today around, you know, a lot of companies have this very linear view of the world. They go with a linear approach to how all of their processes work, when we're actually in an exponentially changing world. So that disruption's going to keep going. One of the things I've really noticed is in the last couple of years, I think the language has got a lot better around understanding value and problems, and then finding technology solutions to those problems, rather than I've got a really pretty solution, let's go find a problem. The next step on that really is, though, how do you actually get technology to change decision making? Because there's lots of technologies that are really cool and is going to deliver all this value, but if it doesn't fundamentally change how decisions are made within a business, then you're not actually delivering the value. And the systems and the structures we have within a lot of our businesses just don't allow for different decision making. We've got very traditional organisations where, you know, you're a drill and blast engineer, so you work with drill and blast engineers. You're not in a multifunctional team where you can improve a business based on the data and the technology you have in front of you. So I think that's a real challenge for the business of how do we actually change the way we set up our businesses and run our businesses to actually deliver value and empower decision makings. One of the things from Christian's talk yesterday from Afterburner I really enjoyed was this: how do we empower decision making? Because if we're not doing that, we're not constantly improving.
And how do we remove a layer of complexity, right? That if you're adding a layer of complexity, people just say, I'm not going to do it, I'll just do what I was doing before because I've got an extra form to fill in.
Yeah. Well, driving decision-making to the front line, getting the right information, right time to the right people so that your absolute front line can really make those decisions without having to have all those multiple layers of management. So, you know, no offence to all of us older guys, but our jobs should be going away. That layer, all those multiple layers of management needs to be dissolved, and there should be no reason to have them in today's world. These guys do not need to be having constant supervision. In fact, we do. You know, if you think of it that way. But why on earth would you put another 2, 3, 4 layers above these guys? They're the future of your business. They're the guys who are coming into the business with a huge amount of smarts. And then we, in the first, you know, couple of years, squeeze all that out of them and get them to comply with these traditional old-style management models that, if you think about when modern management was invented, it was 110 years ago. It was the same time as the Oreo cookie. I know that means a lot to everyone in the room, but I love Oreo cookies. And they're still, 110 years later, those are still fantastic. Not so good for my butt, but they're fantastic. 110 years later on the management model, not so good. You know, all that it really does is drive people out, or it doesn't attract them to begin with. You know, one of my favourite phrases is, how come people will take to the streets for what they believe in, but find it hard to get out of bed to come to work? And that's just because what's at the other end of the street when you get to work is it's not as much fun as the cause that you want to go out and fight for, or the cause that you want to get up on the weekend and go be a part of. And so what can you learn from that? You know, what are the things that cause people to get out of bed and go take to the streets? There's a lot you can bring to business and engage people to be able to engage them in the new technology, the decisions that need to be made, and take all those barriers away that prevent people from being engaged.
So the next question we're going to consider, and maybe that will be part of the questions you're going to ask us now, is Aspermont's been very, very clever at structuring the panel the way it is. It looks very PC, it's very gender neutral, etc., etc. But have a look around the room. It's not gender specific. In fact, it is gender specific. It's not gender neutral. 80–90% of the people in our business are men. And we're moving into an era where we have to have continuous autonomous systems that have to be problem-free. And we have to ask ourselves, who are better about preparing for problems rather than solving problems? And I can ask every one of us in the room here who has a wife who has a handbag, and we sometimes are amused by the handbags, but the handbags the contents of the handbag can be described by one word: contingencies. Contingencies against almost every eventuality. And most of us sitting in our chairs here, I'm one of the few people in the room probably who still carries a handkerchief, and that's only if I cut my finger off. I'm ready to take it to the hospital in my handkerchief and say, sew that back on. Because everything else I do is done on the fly. I'm not prepared for every eventuality the way my wife is with her handbag. So what questions do you want to ask us? You can interrogate the young or the older folks here, and we'll see where this takes us.
Yeah, I was most insulted in Toronto in that panel we were on in Toronto, and someone in there, I think we've got a couple of 20-year-olds in the audience, someone put their hand up and said, it's only old people in mining who tell me what to do. And I thought, gosh, really? Really?
Yeah.
There you go.
Scary.
When did that happen?
Any questions? This has to be one of the most dynamic panels you've had. So you've got to have lots of questions, and the more challenging, the better.
Thanks, guys. Tiberium, project engineer out at Cadia for Newcrest Mining. We're in the throes of a mining innovation automation project out there on site. I think this topic's probably the most critical one to get right moving forward. But I see a big disjoint with getting sort of your robotics, software, mechatronics type people. How do we go with, one thing we probably haven't talked about the last couple of days is the integration of that. We all know what needs to happen and what we want to do with the digital transformation, but how do you see us integrating that and, I guess, enticing people like from those automation industries and towards going to Mount Isa, Pilbara, or being interested and knowing that they can actually value add to our businesses?
I think it's all about, one of the starting points is mining's just not sexy, right? So the kids come out of school today and they look at their future and they want to go to the places where there's going to be some really cool stuff going on. What's really unusual is that mining's actually pretty damn cool. And the amount of innovation and just the fact that you can take something out of the earth at 1,000 feet, that's pretty damn cool. So a lot of it's got to do, I think that you have to inject some other capabilities into leadership around marketing, around getting a lot of that, that story out there, around really getting, highlighting a lot of that. You'll see on LinkedIn, you see a lot of the consulting firms will highlight their young people and the very cool work that they're doing to be able to get that message out there. So it's got to be beyond the gate at the very, very get-go. Before you even get into the dynamics of the day-to-day business and going out and trying to attract talent from a HR and recruitment perspective, you've got to step back and really say, we need to do a little bit more marketing here about the industry. To get people really interested and enticed and have them understand the kind of capabilities that they're going to develop to be able to, and kickstart their careers that way.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely echo that, right? We've got some really cool technology partners doing some really interesting things in mining. We had a guy in Queensland, and he took one of our systems, and what he did was he put it on lighting rigs and pumps and things like that, and suddenly we had this dumb tech, right? How often have you driven around a mine in an LV when you first started your career filling up damn gen sets? I mean, that is a boring job, and it happens to everyone. And suddenly he took these very boring pieces of tech, and he added some very cool technology, and suddenly they were automated. The shift boss now had on his phone 100 pieces of kit on his mine, and he knew the fuel level. He could turn the lights on and off with his phone. It was a really simple deployment. And we said, great, let's come to site and let's film a case study. We're going to put $70,000, $100,000 into a really cool video case study. And the guy went, you know what? I don't want to publicize what we're doing. I think we'll just keep it to ourselves, right? Yeah. And mining is that, like, just as Pam said, right? Oh. We do an awful job at marketing ourselves. We are much happier to keep the gates closed with a little sign that says private property, and out the train goes with the coal or the iron ore or something at the back end. And if anyone's interested in coming on site, that's too much hassle. We're not going to do it.
Really I remember turning up at site in one of the mines in Western Australia, and the sign said, if you're a salesman who doesn't have an appointment, turn around and go back to where you came from. And this was in the middle of the Western Australian desert. It was a 3-hour drive to the next place. But just as well, I did have an appointment, but I just thought the sign was absolutely shocking that anybody who might have been passing by who was interested in what the mine was about, and nobody there had any interest in telling anybody what they're doing and why. We actually are engaged in a sexy industry. It is a thrill every single time you go into operations. It absolutely is. But we don't tell anybody any of that stuff.
I mean, where else do you get to drive a vehicle that's the size of a house? I mean, that's cool. You show people a picture of you stood next to a wheel, and they go, wow, that's cool. Or a pickup that's in a 100-ton excavator bucket. People go, cool, wow, that's really interesting. But no, do we talk about it? No, we don't.
Let's see if we can get this level of enthusiasm from the audience to ask us some more questions.
Doug, Peter Prinsloo from Sandvik Mining. I'm the automation manager in APAC and share the same passions as you guys do. I just got a question for Joe. We both studied at the Camborne University of Mines, and I want to know, Joe, how many modules did you cover that talked about automation when you were doing your mining degree?
I can answer that with a simple number. It's a low 10. That I think they're doing it now, but for me it was traditional mining engineering, right? And I got into industry and I did that, and I joined a technology company later on because I thought, you know, miners and technology, it's coming and it's going that way, and we have to do something about it.
So the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, we can talk about innovation and technology till the cows come home. Mining engineers need to understand how to design a mine to be suitable for automation. Because a lot of the times it fails in the application, not in the technology. The technology works, but as soon as you want to start applying the technology, the application is wrong. So we need to get the application right before this is going to take off. Thanks, guys.
Is the application always an environmental thing, or is it also the adoption or the uptake by people?
It's also the uptake.
Yeah, yeah. We're working with, unrelated to mining, but I think it's really important to get cross-industry learning. We're working with an insurance company in San Francisco right now. They invested $30 million in the grand scheme of mining, not so much, that's half a truck or something, I think, but $30 million in an IT system, and they were about to toss it out. They said, we made a mistake, it's just a bad system. And so we said, stop, let's take a look. And let's take a look at all the interfaces to this IT and establish, is it the system or is it the way it's been communicated, rolled out, trained, and then utilised, and then how is it fitting with everything else? And if you do, you know, if you step back, forget about process mapping and the old days of that, step back, do an aerial map, take a look at the absolute cross-business, everything that this IT system or this piece of technology or this truck or this whatever touches, and look at all the interfaces and say, where is it working, where is it not? And do all the old processes fit with the new IT? Do the people's skills fit with the new IT? Do the customers, suppliers, everybody that interfaces with it, how seamless and how smooth is it? Until you do that, you can't blame it on one or the other. And you've got to come up then with your list and say, okay, what is it? So 9 months later, this IT system's working bloody good, doing exactly what it was meant to do and giving that firm the return on investment that that IT was meant to give. 9 months ago, they were ready to can it. Bad decision.
And really, to echo that, you see that all the time. And one of my favourite people to listen to is a guy called Rory Sutherland, who's actually an advertising ad man, and he brings a really unique perspective that, and mining is awful for this. There's way too many engineers, so people think big problems need big, expensive solutions. And when it comes to the softer, not requiring a lot of money, but requiring a lot of effort, not much time is spent there. And so you have really big, great technology that just gets implemented really badly. And a lovely example that he gives is one of Heathrow Airport, that they spent all of this money on a beautiful terminal. And so you get into the terminal and you're going to find the train and you're like, okay, it's the blue train. So they have a yellow sign on the opposite side to where you need to go. So the small stuff, the small things that mean the technology will actually be adopted and interface as well with people.
Right.
No effort is spent on that. It's all spent on the really big, shiny part of it, but that interfacing at the end is often forgotten.
Yeah, yeah.
Hamish Manzi from Adani. I've got a question about leadership that Pamela was talking about before. If we start on the premise that today's leaders don't have all the answers and that we need to take probably a coaching mindset or a teaming mindset to solving problems, how does the industry look to other industries where that approach works really well in team problem solving, and your thoughts on that?
Just how does it look in terms of other industries, and finish the sentence?
So I guess from the leadership context, we're talking about using technology from other industries, bringing that into mining. How can we bring leadership models and models of working as teams
great question.
into mining?
Yeah. There's so much to learn from, across industry that's completely applicable. And I think the starting point for that, I loved a couple of weeks ago when Elon Musk stood up and said humans are underrated. He said for all of the AI and all of the technology and all that beautiful stuff that he's been doing, the one thing that he really misjudged was its interface with people, and the fact that you really need to figure out what does leadership look like in a world that's high-tech. And what does it look like in a world, you know, double the problem, high-tech, and with all these high-tech kids coming into the world, how do you actually bring all that together? And I think looking at the cross-industry as the starting point is the big one. What we find is it doesn't matter what organisation we go into, and while 50% of our business is mining, the rest can be just about anything. And when you're looking at the absolute leadership issue today, it's the same in every business. It's how do you balance all of the stuff that's coming at you and get your day job done. And, you know, it's the 1 foot in the present, 1 foot in the future. But when you get down to executing on your strategy, which is just getting your work done day to day, it's that leadership model that counts most. So I know I'm not answering your question yet, but one of the key things there is the absolute front line. If you can get your guys who do the work and then figure out for your business, not translating someone else's model, but really defining it for your business, what's that relationship meant to look like? How many people should be involved in a team? And then what's the relationship? What do you want them to do? What's the behaviour model? What's the interaction you want them to have every day? And it's not checking up on them, it's checking in. You know, the role of leadership today is not to supervise, it's to say, how can I help? What barriers can I remove to help you be really successful in your job? How do I put you guys front and centre in my business? Because you guys are the ones who are actually running it. You're actually doing the work and getting stuff done. So I think it's got to be modelled for your business. It's got to be behaviour modelled. You've got to move away from command and control. I know we've been saying that for years, but it's about checking in, not checking up, and it's about removing barriers and having real conversations around problem solving, and then figuring out what the two skill sets are. What do these guys need in their skill base, and what do you need, and how do you put the two together? So it is very much a design for your business today. At the very end of the day, a lot of it is about giving people opportunity, letting them step up and take the experience way before you would normally think that they should. Because I think opportunity is the big, that's what multiplies. The minute you give someone an opportunity to do something different, that next step, people step up. And so your management model has to reflect that.
I'd add to that as well and say we in mining we really have to avoid this vision that every other business is this silver bullet, right? And I think Tesla's actually a fantastic example, right? It's a tech company that decided to build cars, and then they found out that actually building cars is pretty damn hard. It's not the same as running PayPal and injecting some code, right? Last year they were talking about 100,000 cars a quarter, and I think last quarter they made 20,000 or something, and even that was amazing for them. Ford's been doing this for a long time. They make a lot of cars, and I think we need to avoid, right? Mining's a very specific business, and we're good at mining. We're already good at it, and I think we could take the best from other companies and bring it in, but we should also avoid the fact that, if we just did this, that would be the silver bullet, right? If we were just like Google, well, I'll tell you what, Google's got a very specific business, and they're very good at it, and they don't run mines, and they don't want to run mines.
No, they do not.
And I think echoing that, one industry that is doing something a bit differently at the moment that's quite interesting is actually the banking sector. So looking at how their teams are set up, and not this traditional everyone in this team is the same sort of person, and then these teams send something across to engineering, then engineering sends something to process control, and then I need to speak to procurement to get something else. They're actually re-looking at the entire way that the organisational structure works, that their teams are no longer set up by technical discipline. They're actually set up by groups of people who can actually solve problems.
They're set up by the outcome.
Exactly.
What outcome do you want to get? And now let's work backwards and set up our teams and our organisation to that. Yeah.
So you have, if we put this to mining, you've got a mining engineer, you've got a subject matter expert, you've got a frontline operator, you've got a maintainer. in a team to actually solve problems quickly and really fast, rather than this very traditional view of, oh, well, that's something in maintenance and I don't really understand that, so I'm just not going to change it. So I think banking is one area we can look to.
And absolutely on a mine, I would love to go to a mine and find the mining engineer who's just knocking around with having some time to think about solving a problem. Because he is not. He's doing his long-term plan or his short-term plan or his medium-term plan. And to give, like, you have a spare mining engineer and a geologist and let them think about what to do, it just doesn't happen. That's not culturally how we're built.
You've got to give everybody a voice today and utilise it. Otherwise, what's the point?
And certainly that operating philosophy of what's the day-to-day, how do I stay in control of my business? And that's a fundamental layer. We can't give that away. But I think there's 3 sort of layers of business we need to start thinking about. What is the in-control aspect of our business? How do we do that every day? What are we doing around improvement? They've got to be separate people, separate skill sets. You can't ask people to be in the details and then also running improvement projects at the same time. It doesn't work. And then someone who's looking at the 3 to 5 year and what does that look like? And we need to actually challenge the way our business is set up, because guys on site, everyone's trying to do the best they can. They're just not given the time and the tools to do it the way it is at the moment.
Well, with that, the time is almost up, so please join me in thanking the panel, and thank you for your questions.